All right, let's move into our game review. We are talking about Darwin's Journey today. It's going to be a 2021 release. The designers are Simone Luciani and Nestor Manjon. I hope I said that name right. The artist is Paolo Voto, and the publisher is Thundergriff Games. Eller, what is Darwin's Journey about?
So Darwin's Journey is about being you're exploring the Galapagos Islands like Darwin did, and you're finding species to basically prove the theory of evolution, right? And there's a couple different types of species, and so you're moving through these islands and you're collecting them, and then you want to put them in the museum. And at the start of the game, you're getting money, but at the end of the game, you're kind of building up this theory. And the more you can do that, you need the money to kind of, get through the game. But the better you do at the theory is going to score you a lot of points at the end of the game. So kind of timing all that out over the 5 rounds is kind of really key to mastering the game.
And the victory point track is essentially how far you're rejecting God. Is that what I'm to understand?
Basically.
Okay,
basically,
good.
yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Just wanted to make sure about that.
It's like negative faith points. Like you get faith points in some games. You want to go the other way here.
Well, let's start off with the obvious. It's a gorgeous game. It
Yeah,
is
it's
a it
beautiful.
is a gorgeous game. We talked about the board just the last time we played it, and there were some people that were saying, well, Trey in particular was saying that the board is really really busy, and it is.
Yeah,
That's
and
fair.
yeah, I would say it is. It's a lot of this game is a lot of information to take in your first play,
Yes.
especially looking at the board is pretty overwhelming. But after 2 or 3 plays, it all kind of like settles in, and I think it's from the particularly I think from the Italians, the two T games that came out, Takenu and Taiwan Tsuyu, is this kind of like this new design. I think technique of basically having all the information on the board, on the
Yeah.
main player
Yep.
board,
Yep.
including the mechanics and everything, how it works. Which I feel like again, it's a lot of information, but ultimately, I think it's nice to be able to not necessarily have to refer to the rule book when all the rules are basically like spelled out in iconography on the board for the most part.
Yeah, I agree. I will say that one of my favorite things about games is that when I go to a convention and I see a game that I've never played before, and I look at the board, it's hieroglyphics. It's completely ununderstandable, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck is going on. But
Right.
5 minutes, 10 minutes into the rules explanation, suddenly I look at the board and it's as though I read the Rosetta Stone, right? All of a sudden, I understand everything that the board is saying, right? I get
Yeah.
it, right? And there may be a few rules that I need to learn, but for the most part, I get it.
Yeah.
Darwin's Journey is not that quick a transition from indecipherable to decipherable. Even
Yeah.
though all the things are on there, it's got a lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
in this game. But at its basis, it's a worker placement game, right?
Yeah.
The
Yep.
interesting thing about it, though, is that these workers are upgradable, and they're upgradable in a very, very interesting way. They each start. You start off by drafting 3 cards. You have a hand of 4 cards. You're going to keep one, pass, and so on and so forth until you have 3 cards that you want to start with. And these are your assistants. They're the people that are working with you, and they will be of one of 4 basic types. Right? They will be scribes who write letters home and share information, and so on and so forth. They will be scholars who are studying these details. They will be explorers who are going inland on these islands and exploring them, and they will be navigators who are guiding the boat through the Galapagos Islands, right? Each of them will have certain things that they want, and if they get the things that they want, then they have a secret power that they will unlock. That's generally a very good bonus that you'll get at one point in the game. But each of these guys, they start with that one specialty, right? The specialty of scholarship, of scribe, of explorer, or of navigator, essentially. I'm not sure if I'm using the correct terms, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Over the course of the game, scholarship actions can allow you to get other seals. So all of a sudden, your navigator isn't just a navigator, but he's a navigator and an explorer, or he has 2 seals of navigation. which can allow him to unlock and be able to use more powerful navigation actions that move his ship farther or faster or do more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then even to the point where when you get 4 seals of on your particular guy, you've unlocked the silver award, right? He is basically he or she is a much better person, and whatever action they take, they get a bonus to that action. They get to do it one extra time. Sometimes they get to do it in a slightly different way, which is interesting. It's a good twist on the worker placement, because you're not simply placing workers, but you're also making really hard decisions in terms of who am I upgrading as far as my workers go, in what way am I upgrading them, and what is my goal in that upgrading? Is it just to get the bonus on the card that they have, or is it to make them a person that is going to be able to do A, B, and C?
Mm-hmm. And which worker do I use to take this particular action this round? Because sometimes you're upgrading, so you don't want to use that worker because you want to use them for a particular or a more powerful action.
Yes.
And yeah, it's really well done. I've seen this mechanic in a few other games. I think there's a game called Chimera Station, where it's like this kind of alien theme, and you're putting these different pieces onto your worker placement meeple.
Sure.
But it just didn't feel like it was executed as well. It feels kind of clumsy. But this thing with the seals and the choices that you make, and how how you build these workers interweaves with the rest of the game, I think is just really well done.
I thought so too. Yeah, Caverna is another game in which you can you take your workers and you can upgrade them in terms of the level of adventurer that they are. But those are still much more basic than this. This isn't just a sliding scale of power. This is a variety of different effects depending on which seals you're adding to each individual character, which is cool.
Yeah, and then the seals, give in-game scoring, like how well. Like I've seen certain games where people did the players did a really great job of I think one player really focused on it one game, and they were able to get full seals for all of their meeples, which I think is super impressive to do.
Wow.
I don't know if that won in the game. I don't think it did, but you can. That's one of the things you have to kind of balance out and decide, like how, do you have a couple of your workers have a couple of seals, or do you focus on one worker to get them, all the way to the gold level? You only have 5 rounds to do it. Getting seals is kind of hard and expensive. It just makes for some really meaty, interesting choices in the game.
Yeah, and what you're doing in the game so the top part of the board are journals, and the journals are just action selection spaces. And at the beginning of the game, each journal has 3 spaces on it. The first space is open and available for business, for somebody to go to. The second and third space are not available yet, but they will be able to be unlocked. There's a character action where you can place one of your workers to unlock another space, and that is unlocking more and more powerful actions the further down you go. There's a couple changes to that in terms of there's 2 journals that have tiles that go on there, so they change every game in terms of what they unlock, and those don't necessarily scale because it's random what goes down there. But which we'll get to a point. There's something I want to bring up about that I'm not crazy about, which is there's a certain level of fiddliness to the design as it currently stands, that there are more exceptions than there maybe need to be in the game in a few ways, but. But placing these workers out are going to allow you to do those 4 things. And the 4 things are get more seals, which means upgrading your people. And upgrading your people is a valuable thing because in some ways, when you upgrade a person, you're essentially giving them an action and a third, an action and a half. And later in the game, these guys are taking the equivalent of 2 actions per turn because their actions are more powerful because they've been upgraded. That can happen. letters. The letters aspect of the game is sort of an area majority thing. There are three places that you can send the letters, and those are going to give you victory points, or they're going to give you resources that you're going to want very much in the game. And depending on how many letters you have in these areas, the person with the most letters in each area is going to get a big benefit, and the second most is going to get a smaller benefit. And then navigation is moving your ship. And at the start of the game, we can explore just one island. But as we move our ship, if we move it far enough, we can explore a second and then even a third island. And those islands are different in nature, right? They have different focuses to some degree. The third island has a lot of victory points on it. You're literally unlocking just point grabs every time you take an action like that, correct?
Yep. Yep.
Which is interesting. So, tell us about the species collection, because that's the real. I think for most games, that's going to be the main point collector. How does that work, and how does the museum work?
Yeah. So also with the explore action, which moves your meeple around the island, and one more thing to mention about the navigation, moving your ship, is it's also end of round scoring.
Oh,
right,
yes,
like
yes.
where your ship is in relationship to the HMS Beagle or Darwin ship determines. There's a specific goal at the end of each round, so it determines if you get full points or if you get less than full points if your ship is where his is or further. But yeah, on the islands, how you collect specimens is there's a place on your player board that has all of the specimens on it, and as you move through the island, so this is another. And again, I think this game does this really well. Like there's a lot of games that have variable setups, but we already mentioned the special actions that you can take. Another thing is the objectives I just mentioned at the end of each round. Those are different. And random each game. And then the other thing is where the different specimens show up on the islands. And that kind of combination of, flower specimens are important in this game towards the end. And right. Can you get your guide to all of them, I think is really key. But you move your meeple around with the explorer action and you land on those specimens. And it's important to note that not more than one player can be on a specific spot on the islands at a time. So you can kind of block other players. Like if you find a specimen, you can kind of sit your meeple there and nobody else will be able to collect it unless they use another action. But when you land on it, you get to basically discover that specimen. You take a little dome piece and put it to show that you've done it. And then it's ready to go in the museum. The other thing to look out for, which I think is a kind of neat thing in the game, and it's a little bit of take that, but not, I don't think it's definitely something you can avoid happening, is if you do move your meeple off, or again, somebody does get the same specimen you have, it's a bit of a race to get to the museum.
Yes.
To score either the combination of money and not moving up on the knowledge track. When you take that action,
which is interesting because at the beginning of the game, when there's nothing in the museum, when you put a fossil or a specimen into the museum, it's going to score you a lot of money, a lot of money, and money is very tight in this game. But as the museum starts to fill up, every other time you do it, the next time you do it, you're getting less money, but you're getting more points on the knowledge track. And the knowledge track is essentially a multiplier. You're going to be multiplying how well everybody did filling in the museum, multiplied by how far you are up that knowledge track. And they'll be like times 4, times 6, times 8, times 15, and so on and so forth, depending upon how far you can get up there. And that can end up being a lot of endgame victory points. Which is good. It should be, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Thematically, you're gathering species, you're gathering knowledge, and the person who wins Darwin's Journey should be the person that did the best job of that.
Exactly. Who contributed to, again, it's taking these specimens, putting them in the museum for everyone else, to see and take advantage of. And there's even an action space where you can go and study a specimen that somebody else put in the museum. Which I think again just adds to how well the theme meets the mechanics there.
And it does. It feels like when I play this game, it feels like I am a researcher, a scientist who is exploring these islands, and I've never seen them before, and is coming back with all of these samples of these amazing things and comparing them to the other, and then putting them in the museum and getting more money to go back out and find more, or gaining knowledge in leaps and bounds because I'm putting together connections between this species and that species. It feels, when I play this game, like I am a scientist in the era of Charles Darwin, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels really good. It just works really well, design-wise, all the way around.
Yeah. So issues. So one of my issues is that I do think that there are a lot of little sort of niggling rules. Like the game isn't as intuitive as I'd like it to be. There's a bunch of things where, well, in this situation, this is the rule, but down here, that's not the rule anymore. It follows a slightly different thing. So maybe just a bit too much in terms of the, I guess in war games we'd call it Chrome, but in this case we just call it rule exceptions. Not a lot.
Yeah, not a lot. I think once you know the game, it's pretty easy to manage. I think easier than other games. One of the issues I have, which it really depends on the game if it comes up. But that placement of the when you take the correspondence action and place your stamps, you can really get screwed. I think it's a great way to take kind of bonus or extra actions, but like there's certain things you could do, like if you place a camp, there's other ways that you could get additional stamps, and if you've kind of like banked on, getting something because you have the majority of stamps on these places, especially if you really need it in the game, and then somebody at the very end comes along and puts more than you, and then you can't get it or you get less of it, you can get really kind of screwed. And I don't really like that part of the game. I kind of feel like there needs to be like a cutoff, but it's I chalk it up to how the game works, and it's not horrible for me. It's not like a game breaker. Like it's just something that's a little bit annoying. Doesn't happen all the time. But if I did have to point to an issue in a game that I'm, if you haven't been able to tell so far, I'm really a fan of and think is a really awesome design, that would be it probably.
Yeah, of the people that I've played it with, I'm the biggest fan of it, except for you. So we should say that some of the game brainers that we've played this with have been less enthusiastic. Not necessarily negative on the game, but less enthusiastic, I think is fair to say. I'll say that I'm not sure the timing of the game works out that well. I think at different player counts, I think the museum gets filled up well before the game is completely over. That's a problem. I think that's a problem for me. I think that the ending is a little maybe anticlimactic, and maybe the game overstays its welcome a little bit. That's definitely a possibility. Once again, this is not a full review. This is early impressions from us. So, but that's where we're at. I'll also say that this is probably the heaviest game the Italian cadre of designers has put out. I feel like this is approaching, this is approaching some of the heavier designs, and I think a lot of what these Italian designers have done is they've made medium heavy games. I think this is probably closer to a full heavy game.
Yeah. I think we both agreed, although other game brainers did not, that this, I don't know if it feels like a Lacerda, but has almost the level of complexity, maybe baroqueness to a certain level. It's if it's not there, it's getting there. I mean, it is a pretty complex, and really, I think it's more about the interlocking mechanisms and how many of kind of dials and levers you need to watch to really play the game effectively.
Yeah, it's not like a Lacerda design exactly, but it's on the
Yeah.
road toward there. That's for sure. As far as
Yeah.
what these guys do, but yeah, it looks good to me. I very much enjoy it. I think it has so many hard choices. Every time it's my turn to go, I'm almost the game may take longer than it should because I really Trey said this, that he would love to play this async so that he could sit there and really think about it
Yeah.
before he made his decision. And that would, in some games, every once in a while, they'll have to make that hard decision.
Yeah.
In this game,
Yeah.
all the time, you're making that. You have that trouble, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I remember there was one TTS player who, you put up the request that you want to play a game or whatever, and I just remember him making the comment, I just don't want to sit down. I don't know what I want to play, but I don't want to sit down to a 3 to 4 hour AP session, which again, like your first couple plays is a lot of information, and yeah, the decisions can be pretty agonizing, but I feel like in a very sweet way. In this game, I really love the decision space, and this is the same team of designers that brought us Barrage, which we're all, I think, pretty much all the game brainers are a big fan of.
Oh yeah.
But I feel like, where Barrage, I'm as much as I love the game, I'm actually often a little hesitant or nearly afraid to play because I still feel like I'm not very good at the game, and it can be so punishing if you make the wrong move early on. Whereas I feel like this game scratches a similar itch. I feel like it's really good design, really unique and thematic. And it's not that punishing. Like you can recover in the game, and there's plenty of room to stay competitive. There definitely can be a runaway leader at some point, as we experienced in the game we played last.
Well, okay. Let's say that there is a promo card that is not meant to be played with that we played with.
Yeah. Although I've seen people lose with that card. Like, I mean,
How?
Yeah, I know.
Literally, how?
But this is the thing with the game, though. Like, I feel like that we're talking about Darwin, right? So this is where you basically get the special worker. He is gold and silver because he has basically 6 purple seals, which we didn't mention. You can get these permanent seals that are wild. So he has them.
So the greatest worker that one would ever be able to have in the game, better than anything you could ever have, can do anything, can go anywhere.
Yep.
And the unlocking that special power is easier than unlocking any of the other special powers, some of which are take 7 coins, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's crazy.
So no.
Now the thing is, though, that's also, the Darwin is one of the special actions.
Yeah.
So it can be nerfed quite a bit. You can only use this very powerful action character.
Right.
Plus, it gives you an additional action in the round too, which is like another benefit, right? But you can only do it at most 4 times during the game, and if somebody else takes that special action, then that's going to completely negate it because there can only be one Darwin placement per round, so it can be nerfed.
Yeah. You've heard what I have to say about that.
Yeah. I got it.
Anyway,
I'm not defending it.
Oh no. Darwin's Journey is a fascinating design. It's greatly thematic, which sometimes is something that the Italian designers do very, very well, and sometimes is not really in their strength. But this game feels as though a lot of what the game is designed to do is designed around a situation in which the mechanics are really feeding into the theme. Which brings us to our topic. Darwin's Journey is going to be coming out later in 2021, and be on the lookout for it. We think it could be something really, really special.
Yeah, I'm also, this one final note on Darwin's Journey is they had a very successful Kickstarter campaign. I think I backed it. I think this is one of those cases where I think this has started to be an issue or an argument of like, do you or don't you put your game on Tabletop Simulator for free when you're promoting it, when you're kickstarting it, trying to sell it, there's lots of varying opinions about this, but I think this is a great example of, it was out, it was an official mod, they promoted it, and they still did a very, very successful Kickstarter. I mean, we know that these are designers that have a lot of fans out there and have a nice track record. So that definitely, feed it the success, I think. But again, it definitely can't be done. They had a tournament, which sadly I didn't get around to getting to be a part of, but has some really unique kind of like promotions. And the last thing I want to say is like they unlocked a lot of additional content for which I think is very smart in the business model. So you get the base game on TTS for free, but if you want to get all the additional, cards, all the mechanics, all the additional expansion content that's going to come with the game, which I'm very looking forward to when the game comes out. It'll be, quite a long time since being introduced and kind of like the initial energy and fondness of the game to get it on the table with people and play with all this kind of like new expansion content.
Yeah, and I personally, I think that, Kickstarter does a lot of great things for our hobby, but the add-on bonus content thing, I'm not a fan of. I think it often tends to be a sales tool that weakens designs and feeds bad impulses in terms of game design. But I hope that this one is the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
And there have certainly been Kickstarter add-ons that have been amazing, but there are also plenty that are just like, oh, they should not have put that in there.
Right.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.